Hello, and welcome to the THC Show. I'm your host, Neil Magnuson. This is the show where we talk about truth, hope, and change, those three THC letters that are so important in our world. On the show today, we'll have 8 out of 10 Glenn from CannaMatch.ca join us for the 420 session. As always, Jerry Martin will be here to update us on what's going on with him for the Martin Medical Moment. And we'll give an update as to what's happening with the CSP, RV, and all of that kind of stuff. Yesterday there was a press conference here in British Columbia. They have decided that the provincial government will be, and has now applied to the federal government for a Section 56 exemption for people of British Columbia to be able to have on their possession up to 4.5 grams of either crystal meth, powdered cocaine, crack cocaine, heroin, or fentanyl. Originally, they had what they thought was a deal with the BC government as far as the BC government as far as the Vancouver area network of drug users were the ones spearheading this initiative, and they felt they had a deal where the government would allow for 4.5 grams of each of those substances to be found on a person. Many people are poly drug users. There's reasons why some people have more than one substance on them. And so that was what they originally thought they had going on. But apparently there was discussions between our Premier, John Horgan, and the Safety Minister, Mike Farnsworth, and that resulted in it being a cumulative amount. So people will be allowed to have up to 4.5 grams in total of all of those substances put together. It's hard for people to wrap their brains around for sure that the government's going to allow people to have some sort of retail access to these substances that are quite problematic in our society. However, the role of government is not to dictate to people whether they do or don't do drugs. The role of government is to support people in what their needs are. The people that are using these substances in almost all cases are people that have suffered severe trauma in their life. They have somehow followed a path that led them to some of these substances as relief. And it's nobody's business but theirs whether or not they're using that or that's working for them. People need to be able to make their own choices. We have a government that has decided that it's okay for people to have alcohol and commercial cigarettes. And if you look at the death toll and the carnage from those two substances, you would wonder why people are allowed to have those. There was quite the experiment back in the early part of the 1900s with trying to prohibit people from accessing alcohol because of all the problems that it can cause in society. And where did that go? It led to a whole bunch more problems than there was originally. Lots of things happened when they prohibited alcohol, and so many lives were lost as a result of alcohol prohibition. So much money was wasted as a result of alcohol prohibition. That attempt to prohibit caused the consumption of alcohol to morph from softer alcohols, wines and beers, into harder alcohols because it was easier to hide, easier to transport, easier to get drunk on smaller amounts. It is not the role of government to be deciding what substances people can and cannot have relationships with. It's just not their role. It shouldn't be their role because they can't really do it properly. They don't have the right information and they don't have the right motivation. The only ones that can really help somebody if they're struggling with the problems of substance misuse syndromes is the families and the friends, the communities where there might be something that can be done to help somebody if they want help. But for the government, living in their ivory tower in Ottawa, to make decisions about people's lives like that does nothing but cause more mayhem and more problems for everybody involved. It does not result in less people using drugs. The attempt to prohibit drugs results in an increase in demand, especially amongst our young people and vulnerable populations, rebellious people. And so that increase in demand means there's definitely going to be a supply. And if it's not a legal supply that can happen, well, there will be an illegal supply that will happen. And that's just the economics of things. That's the way things work. There's a cause and effect to everything. And so this is a failed experiment on behalf of the public with respect to prohibiting substances. It does not serve the public well at all. And there is no way to enforce your way out of drug addiction or drug misuse or drug sales. The attempt to do that will generate much more interest in whatever substance you're trying to prohibit, and you'll have all kinds of more problems as a result. And that's what has been evident. But the real issue is that the people that are benefiting off of prohibition are seriously benefiting off of prohibition. It may be a failed policy with respect to the public and how the public is affected by such things. But for those people that want to protect their own interests with respect to other drugs that they can get the government to approve, for them it's a boon. And for people that are involved in the enforcement industry, it's a real boon for them as well. They get, so many of our enforcement officers have been paying their mortgages for all of these years by being drug cops or working on drug files. And it's been a real cash cow for not just the enforcement industry, but for so many industries. There's a whole bunch of collusion going on, and there's a whole bunch of industries that may not be in collusion, but are certainly on their own, exercising whatever leverage they have to try to keep their particular substances protected and the competing substances put down. The whole idea that the government would prohibit cannabis with the science that we actually have on it to date now is completely ludicrous. I mean, it really needs a really big rethink. We need to really be concerned about the government putting criminal sanctions on the public with respect to plants and possession of plants, growing plants, trading in plants. Criminal sanctions against people are to be held back and used only in the most dire of circumstances, only when completely necessary. Criminalizing somebody is an extremely serious thing to do. It affects their life in great ways. So for the government to decide that somehow cannabis is such a horrible plant that we need to use the criminal law against people that are using it. I mean, if you look at the efforts that have been put in by governments around the world to try to stamp out and annihilate the cannabis plant, it's incredible. And so much harm has been done, so many people's lives have been affected, so much money has been wasted on trying to annihilate cannabis. And there was never any justification for it in the first place, other than a bunch of lies and fear-mongering that really, I think, a governing body could have figured out pretty quickly if they wanted to. But I think that their motivations obviously were in different directions, and they were quite happy to prohibit cannabis on behalf of their friends that had other substances that they wanted to have protected or things like that. So that's why we got to where we are. But the whole idea of prohibiting drugs has resulted in this poisoned drug supply. It's the reason we have a street drug supply in the first place. If there wasn't drug prohibition, if there was reasonable access to whatever substances that adults wanted to try for themselves and use for themselves, then we would not have a street drug market. There wouldn't be people on corners in overcoats with all kinds of, I want to buy some of this or buy some of that. There wouldn't be that, because whatever people wanted to buy, you could walk into a storefront and safely access quality-controlled substances that wouldn't carry with it all of those problems that are carried with the street drug trade. The street drug trade is here only because of government policies of trying to prohibit drugs. So now we've got into this ridiculous situation where there's a street drug supply of hard drugs, opioids, and the other harder drugs, that is, for whatever reason, being poisoned to the point where we have an epidemic of overdose deaths. There have been about 8,000 British Columbians, our family members, brothers and sisters, have lost their lives to this poison drug supply in less than 7 years. 8,000 people. It's incredible. And here we are in the most deadliest of years. This year alone, in the first 7 months, there's been 1,000 people die in British Columbia from overdosing on drugs. It dwarfs the numbers of people that have been killed by the pandemic. Yet here we are. And now we've got a government that says they're going to ask the federal government for permission for British Columbians to carry with them some amount of these harder substances, while at the same time, we've been wrestling with the government for almost 5 years now to try to get them to allow cannabis, high-dose edibles, as an option. And we can't seem to do that. The solutions are all pharmaceutical-based. The solutions are not based in trying to bring health and wellness to these people. It's not trying to get them off of the substances that they're on, or if they are trying to get them off of the substances they're on, it's only to put them onto some other pharmaceutical type substance that keeps them addicted and keeps them in that cycle of addiction. And in fact, the new pharmaceutical alternatives to heroin and the street opioids are harder to kick than heroin is. It's harder to go through withdrawal. So the approach by our public servants to this epidemic of overdose deaths is not solving the problem. It's getting worse. They can show you and they will tell you that they've put in all kinds of different measures over the past 7 years to try to address the issue. But the issue is getting worse. We just had our worst 7 months ever with this epidemic. And yet, the obvious solution is one that doesn't get talked about. The media doesn't talk about it. The government doesn't want to talk to us about it. I do have verbal support from our municipal government. I have verbal support from our provincial government. But none of that has been enough to sway the federal government into giving us support in what we're doing here. And it's as ludicrous as can be. And same with the media not reporting on it. This is a big story. We're not making claims we can't substantiate. We've had Professor M.J. Malloy, Dr. Malloy, come with his research staff and look into what it is that we're doing, interview the people that we're helping. There's well over 50 papers that have been released by Dr. Malloy showing the safety and the efficacy of what we're doing here. We've got 266 people that are members of our Cannabis Substitution Program, people that came to us drug sick. And now, years later, still part of the program, getting 420 milligrams every 4 days for free. They're living healthy lives. They're happy, vibrant people, happy to get their 420 milligrams of cannabis, happy to talk to you about how it's helped them. Yet the media doesn't come and report on that. Why? Some think it's because the media is not wanting to encourage anything but the legal cannabis market because they see huge advertising revenue in that industry using their services. I think it must be more than that. I think the media is part of this group of corporations that are profiting off of this situation, that they don't want it to stop. They're quite okay with people dying from the poison drug supply. There is certainly an element of people who think that disobedient drug users should be left to die, and if they're willing to break the law and access illegal drugs, then they should die. And they're quite happy that these people are dying, unless it's their own family members, in which case they're shocked, which has happened so many times. Of those 8,000 people that have died in British Columbia, many of them were people that no one suspected were using drugs. Many people are ashamed of using drugs. They're embarrassed. They don't tell their family. Their families don't know. Even in many cases, their friends don't know. Many of those 8,000 people were what everyone would consider ordinary people, not homeless, drug-addicted people, but ordinary people in all walks of life that were discovered dead because they were using drugs alone and nobody knew. These people need help. They deserve help. Everybody deserves help. In fact, the truth is that the homeless, down and out, drug-addicted people that act out their mental illness and all of the things that are happening with them, especially like visibly here on the downtown east side, those are the abused children of our society. They're not people who deserve our scorn. They're people who deserve our compassion. If you knew the stories of just about anybody that can be seen down here struggling with hard drug use and all the different issues of mental health, if you actually knew their stories, it would curl your hair. You'd go, I absolutely understand why you ended up going down that path and getting onto these types of drugs. Because it does make sense for every one of them how they got to be here. They just simply made choices based on what was going on in their lives and who they were and what was going on around them. And they end up like that. Sure, it's their fault. I mean, you can hold everybody responsible for where they're at in their life and what they're doing. But that doesn't really answer the question. That doesn't really speak to what's actually going on with people. It's easy to do and easy to say if you've got your life going on. If you were lucky enough to be born into a good home and end up with the proper skills and morals to be able to navigate this world of ours, and you've been doing a fine job of that, and you've held a job down, and you haven't got addicted to hard drugs, consider yourself very lucky, because that's all it was. There, but for the grace of nature, any one of us could end up in a horrible environment, traumatized by things we can't even imagine, put out into a world without the proper skills and understandings to be able to navigate what's going on. It's a tough, cruel world for people that aren't prepared for it, that weren't given the proper tools, that weren't born with the proper tools and didn't get them along the way. And that's many people. And it's not their fault. It just is what is. By the time people are really in a position where you could hold their choices against them, they've already gone through a traumatized childhood. They've already been through all of these things that make it so difficult for people to function and make it so easy for people to fall into addiction in many, many different ways, not just addiction to drugs, but addiction to all sorts of different behaviors is always almost driven by trauma. Trying to fill empty voids in people's lives by partaking in a behavior that will fill that void to some degree. And many people turn to alcohol. Many people turn to drugs. Many people turn to lots of different things. People turn to stuff because they got to turn to something. They're not okay. And it's not okay for us to decide for them whether or not they should be okay, how they're going to be okay, what they can do to be okay. It is nobody's business but yours. What you do in your life, unless you're harming other people. And we're not talking about that. We're talking about people that have been harmed. We're talking about people that are hurting bad, that are traumatized and can't deal with it. And what do? What do you expect them to do? Well, you can't expect them to do nothing. And you can't be surprised when they end up going down the path of opioids and hard drugs, especially when there's a medical profession that completely supports those choices. If you go and tell people that, or tell doctors that you're in pain, be it physical or emotional or whatever it is, chances are they're putting you on opioids. That's their go-to. That's where they make all their money. That's where the pharmaceutical companies make all their money. Opioids. Because they're addictive. Wouldn't it be great to have a company with a product that was addictive so people would just have to keep coming back and buying it off you? Boy, that'd make it easy to make sales. And that would be fine if the product that you were selling wasn't messing up their lives, wasn't putting them on the brink of death, wasn't breaking apart families, ruining people's ability to get jobs and all of those sorts of things. 419. You got 1 minute to get it prepared if you don't already. People do drugs. That's all there is to it. And people that are in pain are more likely to do drugs. And people told they can't are more likely to do drugs. People do drugs. It is not the business of government to try to stop people from doing drugs. It is the business of government to educate people about drugs. It's to try to have as healthy a society as we can by using proper scientific-based evidence to make the decisions that we make. And our governments have failed dramatically at that. And if you look at the real history of why they make the choices that they make, you'll see that it's all profit-driven. It's all because there's corporations that have the ear of the government, and they want their interests protected. And the rest of the problems that befall society, they don't care about. And it's the job of our public servants to care about this. It's the role of government to be wary of all of these corporations and what their agenda is. That's what we need. That's what we've got to work for. I hope we can do it. We'll talk a bit more about these things as the show goes on. At this point, it's 4:20. that wonderful time of the day where you get a break from all of these stressful type things. Glenn Wells from CannaMatch.ca is my guest on the show during the 420 session. How are you doing, Glenn?
Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Good, I'm doing fine today.
Oh, it's kind of wet out there, isn't it?
Yeah, it got wet. It was a nice, not bad morning.
And we have a warning, too.
I mean, was it wet all day for you out in Mission?
No. It's been like they said we're going to have sunny mornings and then rainy afternoons and nights. So,
Light them if you got them.
Typical weather for British Columbia in November. Mm-hmm. We had a drought for a couple of months, and now we're just making up for it, they said.
It's to be expected. Like so many other things in life are to be expected.
Yeah. You know? So about that news press conference they did, they're also saying that a lot of the people are not just dying here, but in their homes.
Well, that's the thing. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, 54% of the people are dying in private homes where we don't even know.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The stigma people look at drugs and they think it's down in the poor sections and in the alleys here, but there's actually more people dying at home. It's really
there's a lot
crazy.
of stigma.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stigma on people using those kind of drugs, and so if you end up going down that path, in many cases you don't want nobody to know. You know, you're not going to admit it freely to anybody. There's a lot of people that are closet hard drug users because they're dealing with issues that nobody even knows about. They don't want nobody to know about those issues. They don't want nobody to know what they're doing. And that is one of the bigger problems that we have for sure.
I would kind of agree with giving the possession, but maybe not to everybody. Because I'm just thinking you're 18 years old now.
You wouldn't do it for a 13-year-old.
No, but now you have permission to carry 4.5 grams of fucking cocaine on you, and that could cause a problem later on in life. Because now instead of it being illegal to that people of that age, you can carry it around and do a line in the bathroom or something, right? So it could even promote more of a problem. But now if you were down on the downtown east side and you have a record check of being down there and then you should be, maybe given that permission. But I don't think it should be for everybody.
I don't think it's the role of government to give an individual permission to use whatever they want to use.
Yeah.
Cocaine is a substance derived from a naturally growing plant. That plant has been used for hundreds, if not thousands of years by people as a stimulant, as a drug to help them in many ways.
Heroin.
While we're talking about coca at this point with the coca plant. It's a viable product in Colombia and Peru and other places like that. It's easy to get. Many people consume it just as we here consume coffee. It's just a switching of substances is all that it is.
Yeah.
And there... it's like I said, I started off by saying it's hard for people to wrap their minds around that idea that you're allowed to have these things.
Yeah.
But the thing is that when you're not allowed to have it, it just makes everything way worse.
Yeah.
It doesn't solve the issue. It drives it underground. It makes the substances more toxic, more potentially deadly and lethal.
Yeah.
I mean, the problem we have with a poison drug supply wouldn't be happening if people had a retail outlet that they could go to get those things that they want to have. Mm-hmm. There needs to be controls.
There needs to be controls.
There needs to be controls. I'm fine with some type of a carry limit. I don't think 4.5 grams is quite enough to cover everybody.
Yeah.
And in fact, the people that are using larger amounts, that have heavy habits, those are the people that need protection the most. Those are the vulnerable people. Those are the people that are really liable to be arrested and be, persecuted through the system because of what they have on them for their own personal use. If people have 2 different drugs on them, many times the police think they must be dealers, and so they treat them like that.
Or they have it in separate packages.
Or if they don't have a syringe, then they don't believe they're a drug user. This stuff needs to stop. It's not the government's right to be going in and checking to see, what you've got and how much you've got and da-da-da. If you're hurting somebody, if there's evidence that you're hurting somebody,
then of course,
then we need the government to be able to step in and try to prevent that and to try to deal with that.
Yeah.
But for people that are trying to help themselves, even if they're misguided in how they're helping themselves, even though they might be wrong, even though this is just something that they think might work, it's up to them. And it doesn't help anything to be able to, for a government to say, no, you can't try that, and no, you can't do that. It doesn't solve anything. if people would just, like, if the government was right all the time and they knew everything, if the government could say don't do it and people wouldn't do it, and if there was no value for anybody in any of that stuff, well, then that might be okay. But that's not the truth. Many people find value in just about whatever substance you can imagine, and it's up to them. And we can't know or judge whether or not they are finding value. That's up to them. That's a personal decision. And if a government says don't do things, well, that doesn't mean that nobody will do it. That means that a whole big portion of the population are definitely going to do it. More people are now going to do it than would have done if the government didn't say you couldn't do it, because that's just human nature. That's what goes on here. And the government certainly is not right all the time about all things. You cannot trust them with everything. They don't do the proper science. They're in bed with corporations that are there to try to take advantage of us. So no, the government isn't right all the time. The government can't say don't do it and then nobody will do it. And these substances do have medical value and value for people. So the whole thing is wrong. They can't be doing that. I mean, we live in a world with alcohol and tobacco.
They've been wrong now, because I know it's Vancouver who asked to have it just decriminalized.
And they got that. They got that from the city. So Van Du asked the city of Vancouver, and the city of Vancouver passed that motion. Now the provincial government has taken that and decided to do it on behalf of all British Columbians.
Oh, it is on behalf of all BC.
Yep, okay. It's not just Vancouver; it's all British Columbians. Okay. And so they've now taken the torch, and they're moving. The same thing that should be happening with the Cannabis Substitution Program, is happening and moving forward fairly quickly for, access to safe hard drugs and permission to have that. And all of that does is profit pharmaceutical companies, who are definitely going to be the ones wanting to be supplying the safe supply when it comes.
Of course.
And we're not any real better off than what we were.
No.
What we need is to have cannabis as an option in the toolbox for people to have. And, I know people are out there saying, well, but it is available. There's government stores and lots of them now. Government stores don't have high-dose edibles. Yeah. And that's the real key. That is the real key. We could get into whether or not the government stores have cannabis flower that is good enough quality for medical. May or may not be. I'm sure there's people on the industry side, friends of mine that are now working on the industry side, that like to tell me that the quality is improving all the time, and it's getting better. And there's some companies have nothing but good strains.
Nobody ever tells you when it's doing worse.
But I haven't seen any of that. And that's fine. It doesn't even matter. It's not the smoked cannabis that's important for people that are trying to get off of opioids. It's the high-dose edibles. And so, maybe the government stores will have high-dose edibles, but they don't have them now. No. So if people want high-dose edibles now, they got to break the law, or they got to make them themselves.
Maybe Farmgate will have some high-dose edibles. That's what we got coming
Maybe. We'll see. We'll see how that rolls out. Yeah. I'm not terribly optimistic on that side of things. But I am optimistic on the low barrier access side of things, and I think that once we get that, then that will shift the legal market to more towards low barrier and having other options for people. Yeah. I was driving by, I was out in Maple Ridge this morning, and noticing that there's a fair amount of liquor outlets.
Yes, there is, isn't there?
There is, yeah. And they're all colorful, and they got big signs, and they offer
government prices too.
they offer like the best deal in town. I saw them, the best deal in town on spirits and all that kind of stuff.
Lower than government prices, some of them advertise.
I guess I guess that's what they're talking about. And free ice. One was giving away free ice.
Yeah, most of them give out free ice.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, that's good.
Buy some booze and get some free ice.
Get some free ice. Yeah.
But if you looked at the regulations regulating alcohol and you look at the ones regulating cannabis, you'll see that there's huge discrepancies.
Oh, there is.
But in the favor of alcohol,
the Cannabis and Alcohol Board. Right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, right. But there's so many discrepancies. They're even the same board, but they don't see the discrepancies, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, they certainly don't treat the substances like they're anything alike. Yeah. And they're not really much alike at all. Alcohol is a substance that goes in and dulls down the synapses in the brain and causes a little bit of an imbalance and slowed speech and slowed thought and all of that stuff. It's inhibiting your brain's normal functioning. And that's what rotting berry juice does. Mm-hmm. Cannabis, on the other hand, is a stimulant for your endocannabinoid system.
Keeps your body
boosts all of your levels of the ways that we sense the world. And that can itself be overwhelming for people. Novice users that are first using cannabis are like freaked out about, how bright colors are and how funny things are, and how music that they've been listening to their whole life never sounded like that before. It's an enhancement of your senses. So very different in that respect.
Yeah.
Very different in the effects on society. Alcohol can be used responsibly. It's a big part of most people's lives, or at least a part of most people's lives, and it's used in ways that don't cause us any problems, don't cause them any problems. I mean, maybe on New Year's and on their birthday they get too drunk and have a hangover, so there might be a few headaches, but other than that, not an issue. But for a percentage of the population, it's a huge issue. They can't stop drinking too much, And when they drink too much, they're not a nice person anymore. And bad stuff happens all the time because of alcohol going on in our society. One only needs to come to Vancouver and go spend some time in Gastown or on the Granville Mall on a weekend and see what's going on there. Even with the large police presence that they have, there's still fights and obviously intoxicated people. Lots of issues to do with alcohol. I noticed Halloween as well. There was a number of people arrested for being intoxicated in public and other things that happened. Almost all of it alcohol fueled. So we've got this huge disconnect between, like you say, it's the same board, but they see alcohol as this glorified, regular mainstream part of society.
For the government.
Well, no, we don't want to talk about the money side of it. And then they see cannabis as this evil, sort of now barely tolerated, still people smoking dope type of thing that needs to be heavily regulated and be careful. And if you look at the two different rollouts of the policies, that's very, very obvious. And the opposite is the truth.
They do a small thing. They were thinking of putting cannabis in liquor stores or beside, and they decided not to do that, which I do agree was a very, very smart thing to do. Because you don't need somebody who's been drinking all night that goes back to the liquor store to buy another bottle. Oh, I see this cannabis stuff. Let's smoke this instead, right? We're already inebriated, right? And so I think that was a good decision.
It's not going to stop people from drinking alcohol and consuming cannabis at the same time.
No,
it's somewhat of a deterrent, and I think it makes a bit of a statement, and so I'm quite fine with it.
Yeah.
But I think that cannabis should be available in every other store that's out there.
Yeah.
I mean, they got commercial tobacco, and that's another one you could put side by side and look at those regulations for commercial tobacco and for cannabis and see the ridiculous discrepancies in that. Commercial tobacco kills 4.8 million people every 12 months here on the planet, all by itself, and everybody knows that.
Yeah.
It's the number one reason for hospitalizations in Canada is the OCPD, whatever it is. COPD.
Yeah.
And so, tobacco is a huge problem with respect to people's personal health. It doesn't cause violence. In fact, it probably calms people down, sometimes. Lighting up a smoke will calm a situation. It calms down some people, and it's good for them in that respect. But health-wise, when you look at how many people are killed by it, how many people are injured by it, the regulations don't match the substance. Yeah. And then, like I say, put it up against cannabis again, another smoked material that doesn't cause cancer, that is used in mitigating the circumstances of people that have cancer with using chemotherapy and other things. It's cancer preventative in some cases with some cancers. There's some brain cancers that cannabis seems to be the cure for, or cannabinoids can be the cure for. There's many different cancers. It doesn't work for every one of them 100%. But it's not causing cancer. No. It's addressing many of the cancer's issues. Even if it's not curing the cancer, it still helps people with nausea and helps people sleep and helps people with pain.
And it helps to eat.
So, it's still an obvious example of an upside-down world. Is what it is.
And you were talking about alcohol being berry-made. Actually, I just saw something on the news a couple of days ago where these guys are now making vodka with expired food. The vodka is called Misadvantage. You can look it up online.
Right.
And they're using
Makes
everything.
Sense.
Breads.
Just like they do in the prisons.
Yes, muffin. Well, I don't know. They use...
Well, not just like they do in the prisons.
They use the fruit because...
But in the prisons, anything that'll rot...
You don't eat your fruit at the dessert. I get your fruit, right? Yeah. So
anything that'll rot, they use for making alcohol.
And so now these guys are making this vodka, and you can't get it in the stores yet, but it is online. It's called Misadvantage, and it was really pretty cool.
They don't really market it properly, though. They make it all look very pretty and very nice and very sophisticated. This is the rotten juice off of, or the juice off of rotting berries and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
and it screws you up.
It's poison.
Yeah,
right. It's poison.
Yeah.
That's why it makes you
kidneys,
the way it makes you.
Your liver. You can get water on the brain.
It causes cancer too.
Yeah.
Lots of problems.
Get the big red nose from drinking too much alcohol.
It breaks your marriage up lots of times.
The only thing they're going to know about a cannabis smoker is maybe you can't run, you'll be out of breath a little quicker.
I met an old friend of mine. I didn't meet him. He phoned me last night from high school. We haven't seen each other since high school. And he thinks he's responsible for me smoking weed back when I was 15. He thinks he was there that night. And maybe he was. I don't really remember. But that's very cool. And I talked a little bit about how I ended up, being a cannabis user, and that was it. I tried all those other things. I drank like a fish from 15 to 18 or 19 until I turned 19. What do you got going on there?
Neil's saying that Glenn can find a sesh from a mile away. And Sterling is saying hi to us.
I say hi, Sterling. and so, I said that, by the time I was married for 17 years, I had, cannabis was my only substance that I used, and I was really happy about that. Because when your marriage ends, for most people, it's not a fun time.
No.
It's a real kick to the groin.
Alcohol, you drink a lot more.
And I know a lot of my friends, when they had their marriages break up, they crawled into a bottle for a while, and it really hurt them.
Yeah.
And stuff. And my friend last night on the phone said that he was in the same situation, and he understands too, and that was his go-to. And it is for so many people.
So it's almost like what I was just saying. That now that if they pass that law that you can carry 4.5 grams, it's like people are getting in trouble and getting into alcohol when they're depressed. Or are they going to get into these drugs and make things worse because now they can carry these 4.5 grams?
It's hard to say what's going to happen with that.
It's I don't know. It's kind of scary, but. Maybe 10, 20 years ago when I was doing crack, I'd be going, yay, but not anymore.
The world can't really get much more scary than it already is. We have huge alcohol problems around the globe in so many countries, and here in North America as well. We have obviously the problem of commercial tobacco that's killing, like I say, 4.8 million people every 12 months. People. Have you lost someone to tobacco and to cancer caused by tobacco? I have. I think most families have. It's a real prevalent thing there. This epidemic we're talking about of overdose deaths, because there's a whole bunch of people in our society that are using opioids in ways that are dangerous.
Yes.
And even if you've got a safe supply of opioids are not a substance that you want to use on a daily basis. Yet if you get on them on a daily basis, it's hard to get off them. But once that's going on, it messes up your bowels. It messes up lots of things, depending on where you're getting your opioids, whether you're using the pharmaceutical synthetic opioids, which have all kinds of problems associated with them, side effects and what have you. If you're getting your opioids off the street, you really don't have a clue what you're getting, and there could be lots of things in there, and there usually is lots of things in there that cause many other health issues. So that's all driven by prohibition.
Yeah.
All of the scariness of the drug addicted, the alcohol addicted, the tobacco addicted, the people that are all around us struggling with substance misuse we live in a scary world.
Yeah, it is.
Will it be more scary if people are also using cocaine along with alcohol and along with cannabis and other things? I don't know.
Yeah.
I used cocaine for several years, along with it didn't scare me. It didn't scare me.
No.
It started to scare me towards the end about how much money I'd put into it over the period of time. Yeah. It didn't scare me, but I certainly was losing interest in the effects.
Yeah.
It wasn't worth all the money it was costing, for sure. Thankfully, I had cannabis as something to compare it with, and a real good cannabis flower or concentrate. That really gave you a nice.
Yeah.
Well, and it gave you a good time.
Yeah.
Doing the coke.
Edgy,
there was feelings there that were desirable, but it wasn't as good as what cannabis was for sure.
No.
When it was time to quit, I had no trouble quitting. I'd had enough, so it wasn't scary for me. I don't know about other people. If our government spent anywhere near as much effort helping people understand the nature of addiction, the problems with substances, educating from young ages the real truth about these things, then if they put as much effort into that as they do into like trying to end a pandemic to get down to 0 cases of some virus that you can't ever get down to 0 cases, but until we do, no more rights and freedoms for anybody. They have put so much money into that, so much effort into that. If we have a problem with substance misuse, and we do, and people are dying as a result, which they are, then it would be nice to see our government put some similar amount of effort into trying to deal with that. And if they did it properly, they would end all prohibitions of drugs, because prohibition doesn't work. They would regulate substances properly so that there was a safe supply. And a big part of those regulations would be to spend a bunch of time educating people. The truth is, for people who know and people who don't know, nobody really wants anything to do with heroin, crack, crystal meth, fentanyl, any of those things, unless they're already stuck on them, or unless they're in a lot of pain and they've got friends that are using it and they're considering maybe that would help them. But most people... Or
depression has kicked in.
Sure, they're the vulnerable people of our society. They've suffered some serious trauma, or depression has kicked in because they've lost their job, they're losing their home, they've whatever it is, or the government took their kids away. Who knows? But they're suffering. They're on the verge, and they're contemplating doing that sort of thing. Most people aren't there. Most people are not there. In fact, most people are the opposite of there. Most people, if you put a bucket of crack cocaine on the sidewalk there and said, hey, this is what this is, they won't go anywhere near that. And especially if you educated them as to the parameters of the use of that and what's happened and how it can be problematic for people. If you really educated people properly, they won't go anywhere near that stuff. Nobody wants to have a fentanyl habit or a crystal meth habit, or, well, I can't say that. Maybe some people do want to have a crystal. And who knows if people do or don't, It's up to them if they do or don't. And is that scary for you? Well, if it's not you, I wouldn't be too scared about it. If it's your son and daughter, well, hey, I get it. We all get scared easy about what might happen to our sons and daughters. And so let's spend some time as parents, as a community, as governments, educating our young people about these things and helping them
on cannabis. But then look who her daddy is, right? So and all my other kids they use cannabis too. My son does.
I met your son. He's a fine young man. I met your daughter the other day. She seems like a wonderful young lady.
Yeah, she's got my grandson.
Cannabis users are nothing to be afraid of. No. And really users of other substances may or may not be someone to be afraid of, but it's not really the substance that's the issue. It's the person themselves. And so most people are good people, and most people are going to make good choices if given the right information, if given the right availability of the things they want. But you mess with people's heads when you say you can't have this. You can have this, but you can't have that. There are such a large segment of our population that upon hearing that are going to be very interested in what they're not allowed to do. And it really does increase the interest. It increases the use, the abuse. It increases all of the different problematic parameters of substances when you do that. It's just not the way to go. And we should have learned that a long time ago, except like I say, it doesn't work for the public. It really works for the select few that are involved in making money off of prohibition. And it's big money. And we're talking pharmaceutical companies. So pharmaceutical companies, like Pfizer, for example. Pfizer has not only been implicated, they have been charged and convicted, and they have apologized, and they've paid out money, and there's more to come for their role in the opioid crisis.
Yes, I've seen that,
And it's huge. And they've admitted it. And it's public knowledge. It's right out there. They've admitted it. This is what they did. They overprescribed. They had doctors overprescribe opioid. They put on a big campaign. They minimized the harms. They minimized the addictive. In fact, they said it wasn't addictive. They are very, very culpable in this whole mess that we're in right now. And yet, if you take a look at the different news agencies and media programs, especially news programs and programming that is current affairs, you'll find that almost all of them are sponsored by Pfizer. So Pfizer's going around and writing checks out to CNN news departments, to all of these current affairs programs, to the different programs that would otherwise be able to report on the opioid crisis and all that's going on. But how are they going to, how do you think they're going to report on the opioid crisis with respect to the role played by pharmaceutical companies when they're being paid by that very pharmaceutical company that is in question?
They're not going
to be saying bad things about it.
Don't kick the gift horse in the mouth,
exactly.
right?
But
Right?
don't even look. You're not supposed to look to get.
Is it look or kick?
It's look.
It's look.
Okay. Yeah, because when somebody's giving you or selling you a horse, you would go and look in the mouth, and then the shape of the teeth would tell you a lot about the health of the horse.
Yeah.
And so
what is a gift horse?
When it's a gift horse, when somebody's giving it to you, you don't look in the mouth. all right, I'll take your horse, even if you're just going to turn it into glue.
Yeah, okay,
it's worth money for glue, right?
Or stew.
Glue
or stew.
Or horses. So yeah.
Horse meat stew. Yeah, there you go.
So yeah, there you go. I mean, it's.
I don't know. I guess only the future will tell how it's going to go, right?
It's a corrupt world, and it's not just.
Maybe the environment's going to collapse on us, and we're all going to need to do cocaine and meth just so we don't care anymore. But you go, fuck the world. That's it. We're all getting high. Here we go.
Whatever is the right answer for you, you go ahead. If it's end times. And we could all live like it's end times because life could end for any of us at any moment.
Anytime.
It might even be able to end for all of us at some point down the road. Who knows what could happen here? We live in space. We live in a universe full of all kinds of stones that are zooming around out there.
Storms too.
We don't really have a handle on a whole bunch of them. We do have a handle on some of them, but there's a whole bunch that we don't, and so we could be hit by any type of a big, asteroid or meteor that could do serious damage to the whole planet. That could be an extinction event.
Yep.
An extinction event could happen several different ways. Could happen at any time. It could all of a sudden shift over there. It could be winter and never get to be summer again. And sure, there'd be humans adapt, and we would figure that out and stuff to some degree.
We'd be all hitting those caverns that the U.S. have in the ground and all that kind of stuff. And
there's going to be humans surviving, but the world as we know it, life as we know it,
would change.
Could end like normalcy at any moment here, and any person could have their normalcy. I think did I mention on the show, or was it to you privately? I met a fellow at this, we had a Halloween event at the art gallery. It was fabulous. It wasn't well attended until the sun went down, and then there was a number of people that came. The music was great all day.
We were rocking, or not rocking, but they were bebopping away.
The vibes were just incredible all day long. They had the whole place. Everybody had a dance going on, standing
I'm a rock and
wherever
roll
they
guy.
were,
You can see the camera was shaking.
Yeah, exactly. It was fantastic. It was a great, beautiful day. I had good conversations with cops while I was there.
Oh, did you?
One in particular that
I beside him with my judge's uniform in a bag and get a picture.
I want to get back to this other fella, Neil.
Okay,
so remind me of that. We're going to wrap up quickly because Jerry's here and we're going to talk to him.
Yeah.
But I did talk to this cop. And it was a good conversation, and I ended up saying something like, we've had really good relations with the VPD at our protest rallies over the years here. I've been very happy, other than 2015, and that was horrible.
That was horrible.
And he says, well, bear in mind that they were responding to someone who was selling cannabis to minors.
Yeah.
I said, no, sir, I was not. And I was very upset when I heard that on the news when I got out of jail that night. I'm the one they arrested for that. I'm the one they accused of that, except I was never charged with that. That was never brought up at all.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I wouldn't do that, sir. I'm a family man. I have children of my own. I respect families and I respect kids. And I would never sell anything like that to a kid. I said, and you know that a kid doesn't determine basically on age. You can tell a kid by somebody who's got smarts, who's mature.
Yeah.
16 and up, a person could well be mature enough, and I would help them get cannabis. But when they come along, hey, mister, could I get some weed off you? Something like that. I mean, I'm going to absolutely talk to that person about their choices and what they're doing with their life and where their parents are in their life. And I always talk to young people that are below that age of where you would help get anything, because it's not our right, not anybody's right, to help some person, hey, mister person, a kid, to get access to anything like that. It's leave it up to their brother or their cousin or their mom and dad or family, whoever. But it is not the role of any other citizen to decide to intervene on a kid and put him on whatever path to whatever. So I would never do that. And I always take great responsibility on myself to try to educate that young person as best I can and do what that parent would be happy with me saying and doing to them every time.
Yeah.
And so, I said, my lawyer and I, we went over all of the tapes. I said, we had all the film from the VPD of that cannabis day and what happened there when we were attacked by 30 VPD. 15 at first came marching in, jumped on me, attacked me, almost killed me. 15 more followed them and surrounded the big scrum that was going on with pepper spray, spraying all the people around the scrum there. And we looked at all the tape of all the people and me sitting there helping people get access, and everybody that came and talked to me, there was no young people that would be anywhere close to being a minor at all. So that was a red herring. But the thing I wanted to mention is this fella came to the table there. We had a cannabis substitution booth set up at the Hollyweed event at the art gallery, and he introduced himself, and his name was Neil as well.
Yes.
And he was a sufferer of MS.
Yeah.
And he said that I'm Neil with this name, but I'm not the Neil with that name that was born. Yeah. That Neil is dead.
Yeah.
He said, I died.
Yeah.
He said, I'm not that same person. He said, it all happened one day when he woke up and he just wasn't himself.
Yeah.
He didn't know what was going on. He went to the doctors. They ran him through a bunch of tests. They came back and said, I'm very sorry to tell you that you got MS.
Wow.
And he said ever since then, his life has not been the same at all. He can't function the way that he otherwise did. He can't hold the same job. Thankfully, he had a really good job before that happened. He did very well for himself, and so he's got some resources to help him.
Yeah.
But you never know what can happen in this world, and that's the point, is that we could be living in end times right now, and what do we do about it? I had a fellow at Edmonton on one of the Freedom Tours come up to me, and he said, I've been given 6 months to live, and I'm going to get myself some crack. What do you think about that?
Well,
I said, I feel really badly that you've been given such a short amount of time to live.
What if they're wrong?
What choices that you do for yourself, is your business.
Yeah.
If that's what you feel like you want to do or you need to do, who gets to tell you that you can't when you're dying? We're all dying.
I would have asked them what if they're wrong. Because they can be wrong. You might live 2 years.
But his point was really, and my point is too, it's nobody's business.
No.
We could all die tomorrow.
Yeah.
We get to all make whatever choice we want today. And as long as we're not hurting other people, it's nobody's business.
Exactly.
And the idea that the government thinks they have the business and the right to get into your life and say, no, you can't do this and you can't do that and you must do this and we'll make these things available to you and they're all deadly and horrible and these things you can't have and they're all natural and they could probably help you without side effects. It's not their role. It's not their right. They can't do it. They couldn't possibly do it because the way our system is, governance is dominated and controlled by the corporate elite, by the corporate agenda, and they're the ones that have access to our politicians. That's why we get the policies that we get, and that's why we're where we're at. So, here we are. Anyway, there was another comment that I made at the Halloween event during one of my educational talks there, and that is that we should suspend Halloween. We should suspend Halloween, and there should be no more horror movies until real life stops being so fucking horrifying. Sorry, Annie Barbie.
Yeah, there we go, Annie Barbie. So we in every week, man.
Until real life stops being so horrifying, we don't need to have no more monsters and monster movies, and we shouldn't have no Halloweens going on and people trying to scare each other and stuff. We're already all scared enough now. Let's just suspend all that stuff until we can get real life back to normal.
Then I'm going to go farther and let's suspend taxation because that's a scary time of the year too.
There's a lot of scary things.
We're all going to pay our taxes.
All of my educational talks there at the Halloween event were about how scary things are in this world. Thank you so much, Glenn. I appreciate that. We'll see you next week.
Take care.
Have as much fun as you can. So anyway, now we come to the Jerry Martin segment, the Martin Medical Moment on the show, which we've been running for over 2 years. We're into our third year of the show, and we've had this segment as part of our show right from the beginning. And the reason is because it's the big issue with respect to cannabis and the pursuit of access for people. The access to cannabis for medical patients has always been first and foremost with respect to the activities of activists. They were the people that needed the most protection. They were the ones least able to access cannabis, least able to go and find some dealer in a back alley or know somebody. And so we wanted to protect the medical patients first, and that's why our movement started setting up medical cannabis dispensaries. It started with the medicinal cannabis dispensary that's still operating today by Dana Larson. And it moved from there to the Herb School, the Vancouver School of Drug War History and Organic Cultivation, that was at Maine and Hastings for 3.5 years. There was then Karuna. There was numerous other ones that popped up after that. Pretty soon in Vancouver, we had somewhere between 150 and 180 unlicensed cannabis dispensaries, all operating outside of the criminal code of Canada, but all of them serving a clientele of people that were sick, that were suffering, that were poor, that were having a hard time accessing cannabis in the otherwise world. And so it was very, very important for the activist community with respect to cannabis to look after those people first. And so we opened up all of these dispensaries. When Trudeau came along and realized the only way that they could get themselves back into the political picture, having fallen to below opposition status, was to run on a platform of legalizing cannabis for everybody. And he did that. When he was questioned about the people that were using these medical dispensaries and the medical users of cannabis, he said that they did have nothing to worry about, that their needs would be met by legalization, and he was completely full of shit. He was lying through his smiling face there, and all his thing was to protect a whole bunch of very rich people that were going to be able to get licenses from the federal government to be the only ones allowed to grow cannabis for Canadians as part of the Trudeau cartel. And as far as the sick people, those are the ones that really were left out of legalization. He was completely lying through his teeth about that. The medical users that were accessing through these dispensaries soon found their dispensaries closed, soon found that it was very difficult to access cannabis, and so that's where we were as a movement. And so when these dispensaries that were open to help the medical patients started getting shut down, Jerry Martin, who had a dispensary in a small town in Saskatchewan, was one of those dispensary owners who got a letter from Health Canada telling him to cease and desist. Well, that is a completely ridiculous thing to ask a medical cannabis dispensary owner to do. Health Canada was way out of line on that one. When there is over 1,000 people in small town Saskatchewan that are accessing medical cannabis, all of them supported by doctors with confirmations of their diagnosis, all of them being screened to make sure that they're following with the protocols laid down by Philippe Lucas and Riel Kapler way back in the day to try to be in as aligned as we could with what the government would be requiring from medical dispensaries. When you are servicing 1,000 sick people with cannabis, you are not going to tell them that you're not going to help them anymore, because the government wrote you a letter saying that if you don't stop, you're going to be considered illegal. You're already considered illegal. You were illegal before you opened your dispensary. You knew exactly what you were doing was illegal, and you're not going to stop helping those people that have come to depend on you, that have all become part of your extended family. You're not going to tell them no, because some corrupt government has decided that because of legalization, you have to stop helping these people. It makes absolutely no sense. Any type of a compassionate, knowledgeable government would have assessed that situation, realized that those Canadians were relying on their supply of cannabis for their health and for their life, and that government would have made sure that there was some sort of a seamless move into a legal store from the illegal store without anybody having to go without. And if the government is too corrupt and too unethical and discompassionate to be able to understand that, it would be taken on by the dispensary owner to stand up for those people that he's been helping or she's been helping and make sure that they continue to get their meds. And of course, Mr. Martin did exactly that until they came and arrested him and seized his properties, made him close down his dispensary because they seized it from him, took cars that he still owed money on that he'll never see again, seized his bank accounts and his properties, treated him like he was some sort of a heinous criminal that had been ravishing the neighborhood for so long, stealing and maiming and doing horrible things to the point where the government's going to really clamp down and steal all your stuff. And, this is ludicrous. Jerry was a good man. Dispensary owners are good people. They just want to help people. They're brave, strong, heroic Canadians that will one day be looked upon as that. But our government treats them like criminals, like some of the worst criminals, and it's horrible. But here we are, going into the third year of the show, and we're still having our Martin medical moment, where we follow Jerry Martin through his process of getting some sort of satisfaction, hopefully through the courts, and it's still not there. And Jerry's been coming on the show every week to talk about it, or most weeks to talk about it, and it's been a grueling journey. It may be coming to some sort of an end, and it may not be. We'll have to wait and find out. But so far, we're now 5 years coming up this month from when it all started with respect to the raid. And Jerry had his dispensary for less than that amount of time, but not much less. So it's been a 9 or 10, it's this last whole decade of his life. And over half of it has now been involved with not having a dispensary where he could have the joy of giving back to his community, but instead being held out as a potential criminal up for persecution and trying to be prosecuted by a Canadian government with our tax dollars, and to harm him and punish him for being a good, brave Canadian that helped sick people. So it couldn't be more stupid than it is already. Let's bring Jerry on and update a little bit about what's going on. Come on in, Jerry. How are you, brother?
Okay.
You okay?
Yeah.
I'm doing all right. I continue to be frustrated with things. You?
I like your gadget.
Gadget? That's a gadget, yeah.
Yeah.
You want to show the people at home the gadget now? Yeah. This is our gadget here. It's a good one.
It's a microphone, so they're really hearing the gadget right now.
Yeah.
We live in a world full of really cool gadgets,
Yeah,
eh?
we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's neat out there, man. At nighttime, there's all these people just scooting by. They got and they're either got the scooter here, like they're just one thing there,
Yeah.
or they got the one wheel thing there, or they got the hoverboard thing there, and they're all lit up. That's what's really cool.
We just did the first flight of the Jetson fucking flying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Looks good.
I like the lights on these things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they're cool.
Yeah, they're very, very cool. We live in a very interesting world, that's for sure. Yeah. And yeah, I was looking at the event there, the Hollyweed event that we had at the art gallery, and there was some costumes, and there was a number of people that had costumes that had lights on their costumes. There was a fellow there selling gloves that had flashing lights blinking off and on.
I got some of those for kids last year.
They go like that, and they go like that, and I was thinking, wow, man, that'd be awesome to be on mushrooms and seeing all that stuff. And speaking of which, I mentioned a bit about your pursuit with respect to your medical dispensary and how that's, before the courts still, and we're still waiting. But you haven't been waiting. You've been doing a lot of stuff on another front, which is the freedom of thought front, and to do with psychedelics, natural occurring plant medicines that help people in many different ways. The psychedelic pursuit has been very interesting. As anybody who's been watching the show will know, that as we've talked about these things, it's become clear and interesting that what it's all really about is a government wanting to make sure you don't get into certain frames of mind. I mean, that's all it is. It's not a government trying to protect a person from those psychedelic drugs because they could be harmful to the person. That's not their motivation. It's not a government trying to protect society from people using those drugs because that's not a consideration. It's a government that has been actively trying to prevent people from changing the way they think about things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
And that's it. And the changing of how you think about things with respect to psychedelics is not just about having some crazy psychedelic trip where everything looks like cartoon land or there's all kinds of trails and lights and things. It's not about that. Part of it is. But it's not all about that. A lot of it's about people that have been suffering all their life with depression and lots of bad frames of mind, that have found ways through psychedelics to change those frames of mind into ways that are much more positive and functional. So, and now we're talking about people like soldiers that have PTSD and other people that have been traumatized that have PTSD. A lot of suffering people can find relief through these plants and the use of these plants. And the biggest obstacle is government prohibition.
That's what it usually comes down to.
Because there's not many other obstacles. If it wasn't for government prohibition, you would have no trouble helping people get access to these things, right?
No, not at all.
They're easily produced.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, not all of them, but a lot of them. A lot of the plant medicines can be.
Mm-hmm.
Well, mushrooms in particular.
I mean, they grow everywhere.
For sure, easy. Super easy. I grew them.
Yeah, well, and Mother Nature is growing them for us all over the place. They're in people's front yards and backyards. They're in parks all over the place and fields, which is very interesting as we now move into this, because you're pushing the issue. There's other people pushing the issue as well. It is getting to be sort of front and center in the whole pursuit of
Oh yeah, for sure.
You know.
It's big media now.
Yeah, it used to be all cannabis and just a little bit of we should
very little cannabis.
legalize
now.
the other
It's
drugs.
all psychedelics.
But now the big focus is on psychedelics. So I've also been talking a bit with the indigenous communities here in Canada, because they have a history of use with respect to mushrooms.
Yeah,
and,
for sure. Yeah, peyote.
It's been much more difficult to prove a history of use with respect to cannabis, although there is a history of use there in the early days of cannabis, certainly amongst the settlers, but also amongst the indigenous community. But it's much harder to document and find evidence of. But with mushrooms, they have a real claim to make there, that the government can't be restricting their use of what has been a sacred medicine for a long time. And I think for other people that aren't indigenous, although we're all kind of indigenous, we live on this planet, but there is a separation between the areas of the world, and in this world, the non-indigenous people as well. Many of them own property where the mushrooms are popping up. So I think it makes it very difficult for a government to really make it illegal and clamp down on it when they're just popping up in your backyard. I know Adela,
especially out here, anyways.
Yeah, down in the States, I think it's Missouri or Mississippi or somewhere around there, there's a woman, an activist named Adela Wisdom, and I've been following her a little bit for a while. She's a crusader for people that are incarcerated for cannabis, but now she's also facing incarceration because there was some wild hemp plants that popped up on the property that she was controlling. And they're trying to prosecute her, and the laws are really strict in her area. And they're gonna, we'll see if they get away with it. It's so stupid, man. So stupid. The whole world needs to take a great big mushroom trip, and then rethink things the next day. So what about the possibility of addiction to the psychedelics? Is that a thing?
No, they become less. In fact, they can usually, I would think with pretty much almost all psychedelics. This one here doesn't seem to lose effect.
What's that one you have there?
The 4-ACO-DMT.
Okay.
Now available in water.
You have these things up here?
Yeah, this one, it's in water. I made a sample. That one's an alcohol. A lot of people don't like the alcohol. But frankly, I find it way more potent.
A good friend of mine who's been struggling with a lot of things over the years has now tried the other one that you have there. Yeah. And he said it was incredible.
Oh, great. Well, this one's now, it's in water, so it hasn't got that bite to it.
He did a little more than microdoses.
Yeah.
And it was very, very impressed.
Awesome. Impressed. Great.
He'd also tried the LSD analog as well before that, and he'd been using mushrooms on a daily basis. He's got serious health issues. And I won't call it the Rick Simpson oil. It's oil made like Rick Simpson makes oil that we provide here. It's the most concentrated. It's 1,000 milligrams per gram, and works really well for people. But he uses that on a daily basis, and he uses a few grams of mushrooms almost on a daily basis. And now he's been using these things as well. It's all helping him a lot. But he says with the mushrooms, if he doesn't use the mushrooms and doesn't use the oil, he's a mess. Yeah. He's a mess, and
I believe. I believe that they're still doing something, but you're going to lose the psychedelic effect. And I think science is kind of like proving after day 4, it's completely, it's zero.
Yeah.
So it's good to have that break in between. I mean, I'm sure there's benefits to taking them every day, but if you're looking for something more of an antidepressant, you're going to lose the effects by doing that.
Yeah, and I mean he's a rare case. Yeah. I don't know other people like him that do several grams of mushrooms every day for long periods of time. I know people that do several grams of mushrooms, but it's just a short time period. Usually it's once, in 6 months or something, they'll do something like that. For other people, it might be a little more frequent, but I don't know too many people that are using psychedelics every day on a regular basis for long periods of time. not that there's not.
Yeah.
And I mentioned this fellow as well, this other friend of mine.
Yeah, almost every day, I guess. I need some more bigger doses. Yeah, so this helps.
And you've been going down that path for quite a while now.
I have. Yeah, I kind of went down this weekend, but it was a lot of shit going on and this and that. But it happens.
I heard something. I didn't see it, but I heard something. That's why I asked you how you were.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're the test case, really.
Yeah.
As far as we're concerned on this show, I mean, you've been coming on the show for the last couple of years now, and people have been able to follow your journey to some degree. They know because you've been reporting it that you've been using and going through therapies with these things, and now, I mean, I didn't know you were using it on a daily basis. But,
the 4 years ago, not a daily basis. I guess probably 3-4 times a week.
Right, I'm doing the same thing with mushrooms, 3-4 times a week.
Yeah. But definitely need more higher dose trips, and you know what I mean, some therapy to go through that.
And
you know what I mean. It's not a cure-all, just like everything else. And if you don't do the therapy, if you don't do the fucking steps. And you know what I mean?
It doesn't have as much help.
It helps.
But not as much.
And you got it helps. I think it helps a lot more, and then that's where I'm failed.
But you feel like you benefited from what you've been
sure.
doing.
I'm way better than I used to be, like, by far. Sure. I still beat myself up, and I go through my shit. But I know at the end of it, it's whatever. It is what it is. Right. Anybody knows me knows me. He's just going through shit again. Look at him. Whining again.
Well, that's
good.
Me. And I knew that. I mean, I believe that, and I've seen that too. But I wanted you to state it yourself that you've been going through this for quite a while, and it's been a benefit to you.
I don't want people to know that I'm not no fucking superhero.
Sorry, Barbie.
You know what I mean? That I'm a real person, and I got serious fucking trauma, man, from childhood to now.
I made a comment last week in your absence that I had to kind of retract because I don't know.
Yeah.
But I do know that you got out and started life, on the wrong side of the tracks, if you will, and you ended up, using substances in ways that weren't beneficial to you and other things like that. Was that a result of things that happened to you in your childhood? Did you have a happy home?
I would say yes and no. My mom tried to make it as happy as it could, you know what I mean?
Right.
But it was,
It wasn't a happy real place.
It wasn't a happy childhood.
Did you have a good relationship with your father?
They're both loving, but their relationship was not good, and that fucked me up.
Right.
My relationship. You know what I mean? It is what it is. And fucking, once you make those bonds with yourself, that how things are, they're fucking super hard to break, man.
Yeah. I grew up in Surrey. Started in East Vancouver. I've come to know a lot of different people that have had gang ties and had substance abuse issues. Been there, done that. Many of my friends been there, done that. And so many of them, if you talk to them and get to know what's gone on with them, had real problems growing up. Like it was not easy going through childhood, going through puberty, adolescence. And
I was always smart enough to turn down all the gangs. A gang affiliate. No, I mean, thingy there on the police thingy, but gang unit or whatever. But I was always smart enough. I knew I'd be dead, man, a week if I...
Well, that's the thing.
Up, you know what I mean?
That is usually the way out of those situations. People end up dead.
Yeah.
So good for you on that. Good for you on a lot of different things. But I did want to understand that a little bit because we were talking about that last week and how people end up, on that side of the tracks going down that path. And so many times it's to do with home. I was too. My parents, loving, although my dad had no ability to display that to me. He was spare the rod, spoil the child, very disappointed in me constantly for lots of different things, and really, spanked me every day, which may or may not have hurt me. But I hated him for most of my growing up. I came to love him later and understand that he meant well. He thought he was doing the right thing. He was simply doing what was natural to him. He was abused as a kid growing up. His mom didn't really like boys very much and didn't tolerate them very well. And my dad was one that wasn't quite okay. He was born with some health issues. He didn't grow properly. They had to put him on steroids as a teenager to help him to grow a little bit. Had very thick glasses from the time he was about 4 years old. Allergic to milk products, and so he got rickets. Went through the depression. They didn't have much food. So, you know, he was a very guarded, cold kind of a person that nothing ever got to him, and he wouldn't tolerate, you know, much from me. So that's the way it was. And what it did for me, I started smoking cigarettes at 10 years of age. You know, I was stealing stuff early on. There was lots of trouble that I got into. I was certainly on that path. Like you, I avoided the real gang connections, but many of my friends around me were in that when I was growing up in Surrey.
Let's see, I was for stealing cigarillos at 10.
Is that right?
Yeah. On my record, too. Like, what kind of a police officer does that to a child?
Wow. I did not get caught stealing, you know, and that
I mean, I shouldn't have been doing that.
I got caught by my dad, and holy smokes, that was harsh. Yeah. But yeah, so, you know, I had a similar sort of traumatic kind of, well, I don't know, similar, but I mean, I had a bit of a traumatic childhood as well. And it resulted in me acting out in ways that I had to unravel growing up. I had to quit drinking because I was drinking like a fish from 15 to 19.
Yeah. Cocaine fixed that for me.
I didn't
no money for alcohol.
I didn't get into cocaine until into my late 30s. And then it was just a fluke. A guy that I was buying weed off of that also sold cocaine wanted me to paint his house. And so I was painting his house, and at the end of the day, he'd give me the big, you know, the half-pound baggie that would have had cocaine in it, and it was all stuck to the sides, and I could just, you know, rip it down and then take a razor blade and scrape it off. And so by the time, you know, 3 weeks later, I finished painting all of his house inside out, and I wanted that stuff every day after that for a long time. And that's what did it to me. He just gave it to me for free.
Addictive, it's super dangerous now.
I mean, you know, people need to understand these things.
I'm glad there's that meth and cocaine and heroin buyers club here now. That's great.
It's a move in the right direction for sure. I know, like I say, a lot of people have trouble wrapping their brains around it, but when you really look at it thoroughly and understand, I mean, this is the right way out of this, and we need to get out of this. This has gotten us into just a horrible situation where everybody's kids are at risk of addiction and going down these paths that we're talking about. There's all of that out there in the world, and most of it only there because of drug policies that the government has put in. So that's for sure. So any movement on the psychedelics issue at this point?
I just got off a phone call with Neeraj, which will be our new CEO, and then and Dr. Goyle saying, just trying to figure out our focus and, you know, where we're going next.
But it continues to move forward?
Yeah, so we're changing our focus to sex and psychedelics. So
Sex and psychedelics.
Yeah, man. So, I'm super excited about that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sex is a topic we haven't talked about much on this show, but there is something there. Can you imagine if the government was to prohibit sex? You know, would you comply?
So we're going to look at 3 different pillars, you know what I mean? Therapy, drug development, drug testing, also looking at partnering with Halo Analytics here. And then Dr. Hudson mentions this morning too from the university where he has the lab at the University of Lethbridge. So he's back interested again too. So we're still working on the final things, but it's getting there.
Okay. Yeah. Very, very good. Is there a way people can get involved or check out what's going on and follow what you're doing?
Well, we're working on the freedom of thought case too, so we want to push that forward. So as soon as, but they can go to mindtech.ca.
Right.
And there is a little blurb, but freedom of thought on there now. Okay. But nothing to donate to or anything.
So basically,
like that.
They need to just follow this show to find out the latest updates.
Or the website every once in a while. But it's starting to move forward. So.
And if they want access to the products that you have,
so this is microdelics.ca.
Right.
Yeah, I got a whole bunch of new products coming out.
Very cool. Yeah. That's awesome, Jerry. Thank you so much for all the work that you're doing and for carrying on down this path that you're on. With respect to the court that's been going on.
It's coming up now. Well, hey, it's coming. It's this week.
Well, you know, finally got to have your day in front of a judge through a
Friday or something.
It wasn't Zoom, but it was an audio-visual presentation of yourself being cross-examined and other...
well, you lifted my bail stuff today. I don't know exactly what it is, and I get my passport
I was going to say, that's what it said, that you get your passport back. That's been going on for quite a while. Seems to be several months ago.
I'm able to leave the country.
As long as you're double vaccinated and wearing 3 masks and then 6 booster shots, you can maybe go.
Yeah. I'm good.
So, yeah.
Well, I don't know about
I'm staying here for a while.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on. We'll wait and see how things shake down. But right now, I don't have any desire to
I got
travel.
my results from my cholesterol and all that shit's all good now, too.
Well, that's nice, because you were having issues with your heart.
Yeah.
And so the cholesterol count is very important to that.
Yeah.
So that's very good.
Yeah, everything's all in normal ranges now, so.
So with the court case there, you had your time before a judge through a camera, and then there was some final submissions, and now there's a need for more final submissions, and that's coming up this week, right, on the 6th?
On the 5th. It's got
5th?
5th is Friday, right?
So just 3 days from now, on Friday?
Yeah.
That's right, the 6th would be Saturday.
Yeah.
And then that doesn't quite end it, because then there's another get-together on November 15th and 16th.
I think so.
And then that might end it.
Yeah.
And then the judge did indicate that she would have, by that time, gotten herself pretty much up to speed on the other parts of the case that, didn't involve more submissions, and that maybe there will be a decision in a fairly timely fashion. We'll see. But that's where we're at. And then that decision may or may not be appealed, depending on what it is, and this may or may not be even close to over. We'll see.
I hope so.
I know you hope so.
On that now.
I hope so for your sake too, man. I mean, holy smokes, this has been a long time and a lot of pressure. So good luck with all of that. Thank you for all your efforts. We'll catch up with you next week and find out where you're at. Keep on going from there. At least by next week, we'll have found out what happened, in this one coming up on Friday, and have a little more to talk about with that. And we'll be getting that much closer to the final thing, maybe. So, it's coming. It's only been,
there's a new documentary, I think, being released on the 7th too by Microdose.
Okay.
But so that'll be good.
Do you know the name of it?
Is it not the World on Drugs?
The World on Drugs.
The World. You're in it.
I'm in it.
Have you seen it?
No.
Oh, no? I got a pre-clip of it, man, yeah.
Yeah?
You didn't get to yeah.
I don't know if we could
Remember
do
we filmed that last year up in Cannabis Culture?
I do remember that.
Yeah, you got way more airtime than me, so just so I know.
That's
but
good
you
to know.
More to say. You're good at talking, man.
I talk to lots of cameras. You never know when something's going to come out, so that's good to hear.
Yeah, you're in that,
So the World on Drugs, check it out. Apparently I'm in it.
Yeah.
And and the other one that came out recently, this kind of movie / documentary type thing, is an interesting combination of a following a fairly fictitious, although mimicking what's actually happening in life, along with a lot of statistics and a lot of stuff to bring you up to speed on what it's all about. And that's called Body Brokers. Check that one out to see how the treatment industry is really invested in having a recovery go-round of people constantly back and forth into treatment, in many cases paid for by governments or insurance companies or people's families getting together and paying these exorbitant amounts of money to get people treated. But the treatment industry is not invested in having people actually get better.
And again, they're probably not all bad, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just the systems.
The system has now forced this, where the government decided they would pay for people to go into treatment.
It's always been a super low success rate. You know what I mean? With a lot of those things and a lot of those treatment programs. You know?
Yeah, there's a lot of things involved there. People stop using those substances when they decide that they want to. And many times people going into treatment are there because they're forced there by either family or government or judicial rulings.
Yeah, they keep looking at it from a pharmaceutical.
But and then when you see that they've got this opportunity to make so much money per person that goes in there, that you can see that the motivation for the shareholders for sure would be to keep those beds full. Yeah, and therefore you got to keep finding new people to get off the drugs or keep recycling back the ones that have already been through, and have it a deal where it takes 7 or 8 times to get through before you.
Double.
At least you survived it. Yeah, for sure. So thanks, Jerry. Appreciate that a lot. Microdelics.ca and Mindtech.ca. Very cool, man. Yeah. We'll see where this all goes, but I suspect it's going somewhere very cool. A lot of it, both the decision that's going to come down in court, I think is going to result in some very interesting things, be it nay or yay. And what you're doing with the freedom of thought and the pursuit for freedom of thought is very, very interesting down the road too. So thank you very much, sir. All right. So The other part of the show is always now about our little program that we're running here that started out as a project almost 5 years ago. We're coming up to 5 years this month that I first went to Vandu and asked for their support in approaching City Council to put together a project where we would make it as easy as possible for people to get high-dose cannabis edibles to offset the use of the street drugs at the early stages of this epidemic of overdoses that we've got going on here. From there, a little later in November, I went to the VPD board along with Rob Laurie, a lawyer, a friend of mine, and presented to them our ideas for giving away cannabis high-dose edibles, and was very warmly received by the VPD, and they've never interfered with our project, short of one incident that I'll get to in just a moment, but it really wasn't an overt interference with our program. Other than that, they've completely left us alone, and in fact, we've been selling cannabis out of an RV parked less than a block away from the police station and a half a block away from the courthouse, and we just finished 1 year in the RV. That all took place because the project that started at Vandu and having lineups of people twice a week to get care packs with 4 to 6 edibles and a joint evolved to the point where we had great support from Dr. M.J. Malloy and his research team in determining the effectiveness of what we were doing. That information was embraced by Vancouver City Council, who passed a motion over 2 years ago now that they would support low barrier access to cannabis to address the opioid crisis, and that they would allow the distribution of low barrier cannabis throughout the Hastings downtown east side corridor. And so with that information and a meeting with the city where we had an understanding that we would find a storefront and start moving our program inside and providing low barrier access, that we did that. It took us a year to rent a place, but we did. But then instead of getting the city supporting us, we got the licensing department, who were even unaware of the city's motion, threatening us and our landlord, and eventually having us evicted, and demanding that we get some sort of permission from the powers that be. Originally, they said we had to go through the provincial licensing scheme that goes on for government cannabis stores, but those stores are non-medical by their own definition, and what we're doing is definitely medical, and so that we had to go through the federal government to get what we needed to satisfy the Vancouver licensing department. Before we were evicted from the store, we were in the store for almost 5 months. And before that eviction, we applied for a month and a half before the eviction. We applied to the federal government, Health Ministry, and to the Health Canada for licenses for what we were doing and for the suppliers here, with a given track record of demonstrating how well what we were doing was working without any problems. We should have easily been able to get licenses for that. But that didn't happen. We also applied for an emergency exemption, a temporary exemption from the Cannabis Act to allow us to get the license. They said they would try to get that in a timely basis for us. It's been 13 and a half months since we did that. And still regularly we're told by Benoit Seguin, the person in charge at Health Canada's Special Licensing and Exemptions Division, that his team is working diligently on our file on a daily basis and has not stopped since they got that application well over a year ago. For whatever reason, they just can't see fit to allow us to supply cannabis the way that we are and have been doing for almost 5 years now, and we continue to wait. When the eviction happened, we moved into an RV. I got an RV, and overnight, without missing a day, we were still providing our service. And that was very important, because the service that we provide, once we moved into the store, was to make members out of the people that had been waiting to get our care packs twice a week, to make them members, and we ended up with over 200. We've now got 266 of those members, and they get 420 milligrams of high-dose edibles for free every 4 days. And many of those people are transient. Many of them are homeless. They don't have the ability to contact. And so if we were to just all of a sudden close down our store And we wouldn't be going back to Vandu. There was incidents there. That was a 3.5-year period of having people line up in inclement weather with risk to the people in our lineup, and we wouldn't do that again. So the solution is to get an RV to be parked right here where the store is and wait for Health Canada to give us our permission to move back into the store. Meanwhile, we're in the RV doing exactly what we would be doing in the store, except that in the store we would have a much safer place for people to come and access cannabis, and we would have a much better ability to satisfy the needs of those people with more products and more visibility of what products we have, and more ability to expand the program from where it is as well. So in the meantime, we remain in the RV and helping people from there. And like I say, with the VPD, there was just the one incident where 2 weeks after moving into the RV, the anti-vending unit in the area stumbled across our RV with all of my signs out explaining what we were doing, with cannabis visible in jars through the windows of the RV. And they moved in and seized all of our product and threatened us as well. But they have not interfered with us since, and although I've had no assurance from them, in fact the last word was, stop doing what you're doing or we're going to arrest you. But that was, 11 and a half months ago that threat was issued, or at least maybe 11 months ago that threat was issued. It was a couple of weeks after the raid that they eventually on the phone said, well, we appreciate what you're doing. We really hope you can get your license, and we're hoping for you. But in the meantime, you need to quit doing what you're doing. And of course, we can't do that. We wouldn't do that, and it would be unconscionable for us to stop or for them to try to stop us. And I think that was understood by the VPD at the time, and that's why we've had no more interference in many months since then. We continue to be a presence here where we are. Just before I go out there, though, I want to say that our program has resulted in other people taking up the torch and doing what we're doing. We've got Solid in Victoria that within 6 months of what we were doing at Vandu, they started a program of the same nature over there, and that's been running ever since, helping people get access to cannabis to get them through withdrawal and off the hard drugs. Chris Backer, coming up on 2 years now, pretty soon, in Halifax, a good friend of mine. He also recognized the needs in his community and that what we were doing could help. And so now he's been providing to a lineup once a week there in Halifax, doing fabulous work. They do it every Monday. They have their giveaway there. And this past Monday, he put it out there to the people that were lined up to get their care packs. Did they want to say something? Did they want to tell their story? Did they want to comment on what was happening? And a good 10% or more came forward and talked about their situation, talked about how cannabis was helping them with sleep, with their sciatica, with numerous other things. Some real glowing testimonials with respect to how cannabis helps people, how people value the program there, and how great it is that they can get access to trying cannabis to see if it works for them without having to go through the expense of buying it through government stores and not even having the availability of the things that are really necessary to help people that are suffering and in trouble in their lives. If they're suffering from addiction and what have you, they need things that they don't have at government pot stores. So it's really good that Chris is handing that out, and the people there are getting an opportunity to try cannabis and see if it works for them, and he's been having some great success with that. And Mary McCarty, bless her heart, she was our head baker here in Vancouver for a long time, had to go back to London, Ontario, couldn't help herself but start a program up there, and has been providing cannabis care packs to people every Tuesday for several months. And now Mary has decided she's got to go back to Winnipeg for family reasons, and there'll be a program started there. Anybody in Winnipeg, get a hold of Mary, and she's going to need donators and volunteers for sure. And she's going to want to connect with the people that are suffering and needing her help. So that's coming to Winnipeg. Stay tuned for more on that. In the meantime, a fellow named William Hicks, I believe, and another fellow named Chris, and a baker named Bev have taken up the torch in London, Ontario. That program will continue on there. I think it's in good hands from what I know about these fine people that are doing that, and they've got a good supply chain of donators that are going to maintain that program there. So good on Mary and for her crew there for what's going on there. Jason LaFassi still doing things in Sudbury, moving the program forward there, along with other people that we're hearing are also interested and starting the preliminary movements of getting programs going there. We've proven with our program just how valuable it is to people, and I'm really happy to hear that other programs like ours are starting up, because it's really needed here, it's really needed in many other places, and good on anybody that wants to start a cannabis substitution program. Let's go see what's going on with the people outside. It's not a beautiful sunny day in Vancouver today. It's more along the lines of what we're famous for, apparently. Fall weather, where rain is falling and leaves are falling and people are falling because the streets are wet. I guess that's why they call it fall. I'm not really sure. And this here, of course, is the Ganja Mobile, the CSP Healing Wave van, the Scooby Dooby van. And it's been now a full year and a day of servicing this neighborhood. Let's see if anything's going on right here. How are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Pretty good. You can't really see the pot leaf very well.
It's very foggy in
It's
here
very
today.
foggy, yeah. It's smoky. It's smoky, but I don't think the smoke is the reason you can't see the pot leaf.
Us breathing is the problem.
Yes, and breathing out smoke all the time. Bunch of fire-breathing dragons I got here for employees.
We work well. We smoke. We still work well.
I'll attest to that. I have no complaints.
Yeah, we're involved.
Because it's a dual job that you have, right? You got to both help the people that we're helping, and you got to test the products that we're helping them with, because we have to know whether or not this stuff is good. And
we're patients too.
Yeah, and you're patient. You've been waiting a year now to get back in the store.
Sure, that kind of patience.
You're a patient.
It's nice to have an edible start of the day or something, or try
True. Yeah, edibles help in a lot of different ways. In fact, show us the muffins that you got here that you hand out. John Murray makes these.
Running a little low. People have been buying them up quite a bit.
Let's see. We do sell them. What do we sell them? $2 each or something like that. And we give them away to people that can't be on the program, that are suffering in some way or whatever, and if it can help them. And these things have helped so many people. And that's John Murray. He's the one who decided to start making those things, and they really took off.
I know he used to do the food on Sundays for us.
And he morphed into cupcakes.
Yep. And that was a wonderful thing, because
it was
something people really rely on.
Yeah, it's true. And then Michael the Cookie Monster, or Michael the Downtown Angel, he provides these cookies. Well over 60,000 of those we've had in over 4 years of Michael donating to our program, and he donates to other places.
Whenever I have a new person come here saying that they're trying to get off the drugs and wanting an edible, I give them a couple of Mike's cookies and one of John's muffins.
Yeah. And those are only 30 milligrams, so just about anybody can handle one of those, especially if they're people using the other substances. They can handle one of those. The 100 milligram ones, we always warn people. We always make sure they understand there's 100 milligrams in there, and if they don't really know what that means, then they probably just get a cookie, or we tell them to just eat a quarter to start with.
You know how many people love talking, smile ear to ear when you say free 100 milligrams, you say 100 milligrams?
Yeah.
Holy jeez, thank you.
Yeah, it gets us a better response than just about anything else that we do, is that 300 milligram muffin.
Even people come to buy something, right? And you get a muffin, that lights the day up.
It does.
Or a cookie Sunday.
And for other people, they get to come and get a whole pack.
Yeah.
Let's go in the back and see what that's all about. There's that secret knock again. Getting less and less secret every week.
There we go.
So this is the CSP outlet.
Yes, it is.
Cannabis Substitution Program, and people that are registered as members, they can come and tell you their number. And then if they're in the right time slot, then they get access to...
Every 4 days, I'll give them 420 milligrams.
And then they choose that. And so what do you got for them to choose from?
Well, I haven't got some great news today.
I see.
I got this over here. I always have them right here. It's been a busy day. I've had 25 people today.
I see.
So I got some brownies. These brownies here, right here. Yes.
Yeah, that's from Roberta.
Roberta. And I filled this bag up this morning. This bag right here, I filled up this morning, and that's what I got left of a second bag.
Wow.
That's how many people I've had today, and how good the brownies are.
And how they like the brownies.
I think the brownies are one of the good ones.
Nice.
Very good. And Robert's cookies, I got lots of Robert's cookies.
Right.
Right here. These cookies right here. I got this one, and I got 2 different kinds of cookies.
Right.
Right?
They're delicious,
I got double
too.
chocolate, and I got chocolate chip, and everybody loves them, right?
And how many milligrams are those typically?
These are 100 milligrams.
100
They used to be 80,
Yeah.
but he's been making them 100 lately.
Right.
They're pretty good. The brownies were 80 milligrams.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
And what do I have? This one's from a guy called Fraser Valley. These are THC marshmallows.
Marshmallows,
They
eh?
can be used in your coffee. They can be used. There's over 100 milligrams here.
Wow.
They're 5 and 10 milligrams.
Right.
And you can put them in your coffee. You can put them in your hot chocolate. You know, it's winter time.
Interesting.
Right? Very nice. Very good.
We're going to be having some hot chocolate for people here at the RV coming up.
I have some snake oil, and I have snake oil. We looked it up on the internet. But
Yeah.
for this small bottle, it's 800 milligrams.
Wow.
And this is 1,500 milligrams of hemp oil, CBD.
Right.
There's no THC whatsoever in there. So
Right.
if you're hurting today, this is your best bet.
Right.
I
And
would
snake oil
myself.
works really good for
It
people
does?
as well.
Yes.
Yeah. And we still have topical as well. Some great results with the topicals. People that have lots of different skin lesions and problems. It's been just miraculous. We've been documenting it with film.
This topical, we've had
Right.
we've had some people use it, and it works really good.
Yeah, I was just saying that it's been
It's
miraculous.
miracle, yeah. It's very good. It's very good.
Yeah, if you want to see the power of cannabis, just see how it heals sores on people's arms and things. It's incredible. Within a week, things that people had struggled with for months and months get cleaned up with this
I
topical.
have some more gummies. We have these cubes. These are
Green Wilderness
yes,
gummies.
Green Wilderness cubes, with their 50 milligrams each. They're very good.
Such a great supporter of ours for so long.
They've been so long. They've been so good.
Yeah, one of the first gummy people to come to us.
Yes, we had the white packages over at Bandu. Yes,
Yeah.
we did.
And then we had the white containers, and now they've moved into other containers.
We have a fan favorite.
Gorilla
People love
Ganja.
these ones. We have the sativa right here, the mango. That's 40 sativa and 40 CBD, 40 indica and 40 CBD. A mango sativa. This is a 1-to-1. This is a black cherry, 40 indica and 40 CBD. Very popular.
Yeah.
A lot of people like the THC. We have pure
most
indica,
popular.
80 milligrams raspberry.
Yeah, that's probably the
raspberry,
one people want the
most popular.
Yeah.
Raspberry. Right? I run out of them a lot. We have, what do I have here?
And Gorilla Ganja has just been such
I have
fantastic supporters of ours.
Pineapple, CBD, pure CBD, and that's good for pain, anxiety. It doesn't get you high, so a lot of people think down here that they want to get high.
Right.
But on the other hand, a lot of people have a lot of pain, so they've got to
Yeah.
realize, just like
Yeah, and if
which
people
is
are in
which.
pain, they don't really get very high off the
No,
cannabis
no,
anyway.
no.
They get to kill the pain, but they don't
And
get
I
high.
have taken this, you take one every day or you take one every other day, and it does work.
Yeah.
I've had some pain and it goes away over time. Because the CBD you have to get into your system for a while, right? And it go over time. You have to get into your system.
What else you got in there? Well, yeah, Dirty Dave been helping us out with caps, and they've been really popular. People like them. They work very, very well.
These are my 50 milligram THCs, and these are my 5 milligram THC pills.
Yeah, so you got the 5 and the
I have a lot of
50s.
people that rely on the pills.
Yeah, sure.
Pills right here, some Keith. These are 50
Right.
milligram Keith pills that are made from the machine.
Yeah.
A small plastic machine that works great, right?
Yeah,
Very nice.
yeah, and also very effective.
And they also get joints. I will give them, each one that comes here, I will give them a joint.
Got any Joe Pepper cookies today?
I don't have any Joe.
Because
I
they're
have
too
some-
popular.
I have some, but they've broken.
Oh, okay. Well, they still work.
I still have Joe Pepper cookies. It was a star. but it's broken, but they're still good.
Probably our first donator.
Yes.
Was,
she used to do
one
brownies
of the first
for us.
anyway.
She used to do a brownie muffin. Now she does cookies.
Yeah, Weeds, Glass, and Gifts. They were kind of the first up, and then Joe
Everybody's
Pepper.
done a great job.
Fantastic. The donators are so
all the
important.
donators have done a great job.
Yeah.
We've had some long time ones, and they've done really good for us.
Yeah.
They put in the effort, and they know what it takes. They know what it's like.
They make it work.
Yeah. Every week I have some. I have edibles, and everybody does great.
It only works if you have the stuff to give out to people, right?
Yeah,
and without donators, there wouldn't have been any.
They do the best they can.
Thank you so much to all the donors.
I appreciate everything.
There's a donator too, Canadian Lumber, that gave us a big box of rolling papers that we've been able to help people with.
Very nice.
And that was so powerful for us as well. And I don't give them enough credit.
No, we don't.
So thank you to Canadian Lumber, and check their products out as well.
Everybody's done so good for us.
Yep.
And we're still going to be out here, and we're still going to do it. It's raining, but we're still here.
We're starting our second year in the RV now.
Yes, we are.
2 years in the RV.
And people ask me.
I've only been here one, but we're into our second year.
Yes, we are.
All right, we're going to the front.
Okay, thanks, guys.
See ya.
Appreciate it.
Welcome to the CSP testing and production facility. This is where we do some in-house testing. For the sake of the government and our application, we also actually have access to the very best high-tech testing equipment. There's a certified operator that's available to us as well. So part of our application is that the products that we're dispensing to people here are tested, can be tested, and we've been doing it for almost 5 years, so that we do understand that we can trust a number of the suppliers and donators have been donating us for all these years. And with that kind of a track record, the government should be able to license these people. There's no reason why they wouldn't. In fact, by not licensing them, or actively working against these people and considering them criminals and all the rest of it, they're really threatening the supply that is necessary to get and keep people off of these hard drugs. And so that is a really horrible thing that is going on. Us not getting a license, us still facing the threat that we were given months ago by the VPD, really does interfere with what we're doing here. And there's a great professor who's probably the foremost expert on cannabis as a substitution for other substances, Professor Zachary Walsh. He wrote us a wonderful letter in support of what we're doing here. And that's part of our application to Health Canada as well. And in that letter from Professor Walsh, he states that there should be no obstacles placed in front of our efforts because of the success that we're having and the good that we're doing. And yet, even though that's part of our application, I would have to say that a year of not having a license from the federal government that would allow us to move from this little RV here back into the shop where we could have a reasonable space for people to come and access is certainly a hindrance and an obstacle to our abilities to help people the way that we know that we can if we were to have supports from government. So lacking support in government is an obstacle that needs to be removed, and we need to have these people move in our favor. The time is now. I mean, it's been 13 and a half months. It's ridiculous. We now have a new minister in charge. We've outlasted the last federal health minister. There's even a new ministry now that should be addressing what we're doing here, the Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions. We're hoping that's a positive thing. I would encourage you to write letters to this new ministry. Carolyn Bennett is the name of the minister. She's formerly a minister of Indigenous and Crown Relations. And so hopefully she's going to have the right spirit in what she's doing in taking over this portfolio or starting this new ministry, and will recognize the value of our program in combating this overdose crisis, and that it'll all be a positive thing. That's the hope. I have serious hope that that's the case. We're in the process now of crafting a letter to her, along with some other people, because of the different changes that are happening here, along with what's happened with BC and their application for a Section 56 for hard drugs. All of these things are prompting us as an organization to write fresh letters to these people, explaining our situation and appealing for their help. And I would encourage everyone to write letters, emails, phone calls, whatever you can, to the new ministries, to the old ministries, to the media, to whoever you can think of, to help us get this situation moved forward. It's getting ridiculous at this point, and literally lives are being lost. We've got over 200 people that have been sitting on a waiting list that we can't really expand our regular list from because of the confinement of working out of an RV and the limits of that, and the confinements of having only a limited amount of donations. We get a lot of donations. We have a lot of products here for people, but it goes so fast. We put out over 12,000 milligrams every day, 6 days a week here, and it goes really fast. So we go up and down where we have not quite enough of something, and then we have enough, and then we're not quite enough again, and it goes like that. And all of this is just the government interfering and not allowing us to be supported the way that we would be. If we could get the license from the government to move into the store, to be able to open a bank account, we could solicit for donations properly, we could have much more supply for people, we could be able to service way more people than we can from the back of an RV. Many more people would come to and get our services if we were in a store. It's just long overdue that this happens. So please do what you can to help us in that effort. Before I sign off, how are you guys doing? I mean, probably people want to hear from you more than me, but you're all fairly quiet.
We're all stoned.
Stoned and fairly quiet.
It's been a good day, even though it's raining. It's still a good day in here.
George, you're just rolling joints as always.
Yeah, that's all I'm allowed to do.
Roll those joints.
Well, one of our CSP members is in the hospital.
I see.
His mom has been coming for him.
I see.
Some stuff for him today.
Well, good that the mom comes.
He had a bad fall, and
Right.
he had a steel plate in his knee. That apparently, he fell so hard it moved down to his ankle.
Ooh.
So he's got some really bad infection.
Yeah, he comes to CSP. His mom comes and picks up his CSP.
Nice.
Number 251, James Descholais.
No, we don't use names
Yeah, I was
here,
gonna
Andy.
say we probably shouldn't be putting people's names
We
out
don't.
there.
Sorry.
That was a made-up name.
His real name's Steve.
Sorry.
So, any sad stories besides the person who's in hospital? There was
I
a
love that
fellow.
you made it sound like
there was
that
a-
was the happy story. So
There
it's
was
very
a fellow out here in the last couple days was struggling pretty hard, and you had me mention to him, did he want a joint? And he did come and get a joint, and then you gave him a muffin, and
Yes.
pretty happy about that. We get a lot of that here where we see people struggling, and we'll go and offer them something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just
Someone-
see somebody walking by looking really,
She had someone
mopey or
today
for crying
who
or.
has just said he's tried to get into detox.
Yep.
He's had lots of trouble.
He used to live in my building. And he
Yeah,
struggles
he's really
with that.
trying hard to get into detox. It's hard to get in there.
Yeah.
Well, they've got, not the right hours. You know what I mean? Like,
Your
that
phone,
kind of stuff should
yeah.
be 24 hours. It shouldn't be 9 to 5, Whenever
There's a
somebody
lot of
wants
barriers.
to get off drugs, they
You
should
should
have
be
access
there,
to
right
help.
there for them.
But that's just not how our system
You gotta.
works.
That's not
No,
how
the-
it's working.
the
Try
barriers-
Salvation Army down here, the detox.
The
He said
barriers
they
to
want him to call like every day, and he's like, that just doesn't work for me. Like, and that probably doesn't work for a lot of addicts.
They don't try to make it easy by the looks of
No.
it. They're not
No.
catering to the needs of the people that they're helping. There's a lot of stigma, and people are treated as second and third class human beings, if that. And it's not very fun. It's not very nice. It's a situation that needs to change, and this isn't going to change until the stigma ends as well. But,
Well, even like we've met a lot of the guys living at Harbor Light, and a lot of them want to be able to use THC or even just CBD, and they're not allowed to.
they're not, which is
They're
terrible.
told that they'll get kicked out if they test
Yeah.
positive,
Yeah.
right? And it's
So we're here as an option for people, wanting to be an option for people, but they can't even use this option in many cases because they're living in places where that would get them kicked out or off of programs or put back into jail for simply trying to something else that might help them, a non-lethal legal alternative. Even though cannabis is legal now, these people that are in these situations are not allowed to be using cannabis. Because they lump cannabis in with all these other drugs and say a drug is a drug is a drug, and if you're using, and that's all. And it's not the case.
kind of our government's fault because they won't admit that it's medical.
It's
why
true.
on earth would rehab centers want to allow it as medicine
Yeah.
if our own government won't admit that it's medical?
Absolutely, it's the government policies that are stigmatizing the people that are using these
Trying to say
substances.
it's bad for you.
And they've been telling bad stories about these people and making them out to be dope addicts, and without giving them their proper due as being human beings that have been down a path that nobody can know, that they deserve the respect to be able to treat whatever that path has resulted in. I mean, they can be suffering and nobody has a clue, and yet they're denied the ability to try to help themselves in whatever way they see fit, or at least if they're not denied, they're stigmatized for going that direction, and every attempt is made to deny them, even though it's not all that hard to find whatever hard drugs you want. They're easily available in this neighborhood on corners and in tents all over the place. It's easier to find
drugs than a hot coffee down here.
Or a bathroom, that's for sure.
Yep.
You can find the drugs that'll constipate you, but you can't find the toilet to relieve the constipation.
No, we had to watch somebody taking a shit right this morning.
Yeah, the alley that's here is actually called P Alley. That's the name of it.
I think most alleys down here are P Alley.
They could be.
Piss and shit alley.
This one. And that's because there's just no washrooms. And you can kind of understand that because this whole situation has resulted in people using hard drugs dangerously in washrooms.
Too is a lot of people get barred from these community centers, so then they can't go and use the
you
bathrooms
can't do that
are available.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's a mess. It's a mess that could easily be cleaned up with an ending of prohibition, an ending of the stigmatization of human beings for what substances they choose to try to help themselves with an embracing of cannabis, with easy availability of cannabis through storefronts, and lots of different places should be able to provide cannabis for people as an easily available option. This can change. We could change this. But we're not getting support from government to do that, even though we do have support from the local harm reduction outlets and the municipality, and even provincial people have given us verbal support and a little bit of advocacy on our behalf with respect to the federal government. But without the federal government's support, we remain handcuffed in what we're trying to do here. And without the media properly covering what it is that's going on with high-dose edibles and their ability to get people through withdrawal, the general public is unaware that this is a viable, really good solution or part of the solutions for this. And without the public being aware, without them being able to put pressure on the government is getting away with keeping these cycles of addiction going on, with profiting on so many different points along the way, and it won't stop until enough people force them to stop. So those of you who do understand the situation, put it down in writing, please. Send it off to somebody that's in a position of influence, and see if you never know which letter might do it. You never know which phone call, which conversation might be the one that actually turns the tide, that actually does prompt somebody in a position of influence to go and use that influence in a way that will change things and move it in a direction that we can go down that path and end up in a much better world, a world that has cannabis easily available, drugs just being things that people try different ones of to try to deal with their issues, and it's no big deal what drug you're using. A drug is a drug, and people just use drugs, and nobody's stigmatized for the drug that they're using, and nobody's glorified for the drugs that they're using, and big corporations aren't making huge profits on people's addiction to drugs and those sorts of things. We can get there if we work at it. We're working at it by doing this show. You're working at it by watching this show. I hope you're working on it by doing something else and sharing the information, either sharing just the broadcast or the information that you hear on it. I got to thank Pot TV for allowing me the opportunity to use this platform and to get this message out. It's very dear to me, and it's something that I want to see solved. And one of the ways to solve it is by educating as many people as we can. So a big thanks to Pot TV for the availability of the show. A big thanks to my producer, Neil, for making it all happen, so dedicated to getting the message out, not just through my show, but through other shows on Pot TV. Carly Marley with the 420 Lifestyle Show and BC Bud Gal. They are on Mondays. You can tune in and watch them 4 o'clock in the afternoon. BC Bud Gal's back on Thursdays with the Morning Glory, a Wake and Bake show around 10 a.m. Johnny B with what I still think is the most important show, And that's how you grow. And How's It Growing is the name of the show. And how are you growing? And are you growing? And can you grow? And could you grow if you wanted to grow? And if you can grow, you probably should grow, because growing is not just really cool to watch Mother Nature produce medicine for you right then and there, or a good time on a Friday night. If you're not needing it for medicine, you just want to kick back, relax, do some cannabis, and enjoy the music and the sunset and whatever else you got going on that night. But whatever it is that you got going on, to watch it grow in front of you, to be the one responsible for giving it what it needs in the way of water and light and nutrients, is a powerfully good thing. And so much more powerful if you're actually using it for medicine. Powerful because you're then producing the medicine that you know what went into it, and part of your own love went into the medicine that's now going to give back to you. But also economically, because if you're needing cannabis for medicine and you've got to go out and procure it somewhere, you're not growing it for yourself, as you know, it's expensive. Cannabis is not cheap. Good cannabis is not cheap. So when you're producing your own good cannabis by just putting some seeds or a little cutting into a pot and then just taking care of it for a while and watching it grow right before your very eyes, you're growing money on trees, you're growing medicine on trees, and it's very therapeutic, it's very beneficial. And it helps to overgrow the government. It helps the movement move forward. With more people provide for themselves, then the government monopoly of forcing people into their stores is going to have less and less opportunity to be able to get people in there. So let's all grow. Let's encourage people to grow. Let's get growing. And, let our people grow is another one that I like. So thanks to everybody that's been helping us. Thanks to all the donators of all the programs that are going on across Canada. Thanks for everybody who watches the show. It helps to make the world a better place. I hope that you're doing that in a way that is kind to other people and is kind to yourself. And most important, I hope that you're doing that where you're having as much fun as you can, because that's the most important thing. We'll see you next week.